In the first and second days of training, you learn how to request data from the server to use in your application. In this video, you will learn how to send data to the server using the Flex WebService component. You will also handle the confirmation message from the server that returns the record ID for the data that was inserted into the database. In this Flex in a Week training, I'm assuming that you are watching the videos in order, which means that you have already watched the introduction to the HTTP service component video on this third day of training. If you have not, you might want to consider watching the first 4.5 minutes of that video. In it, I review how data has been retrieved from the server to populate this company vehicle request form. I also review how the controller is handling the data between the model and the view. Lastly, I discussed packaging the value object, which contains all the data that the user fills out in this form, in an event object which is now ready for us to pass back to the server. In this video, I will use the web service component to send the form data as a parameter to the server. When I submit this form, the record ID for the record that was inserted into the database is returned, and I handle that in an alert message. This is the starter file for the main application. In the declarations block, I already have one web service component instance. I'm creating a second web service instance to send the data back to the server. I'm giving it an ID property value of vehicle service, and then I'm adding the WSDL property with a value of this URL. Remember that although we are using a Cold Fusion server to generate this WSDL document, you can use any backend technology like Java, JSP, .NET, or PHP that supports SOAP-based web services. Lastly, I'm adding the result event and using FlashBuilder's Code Assist tool to generate the result handler. The two ways to pass arguments to the server operations through web services are parameter binding and explicit parameters. Parameter binding allows developers to predefine the source data for arguments that will be passed to server-side operations. This technique is only available if you use web service MXML tags. You nest a request MXML tag within the operation MXML tags of the web service tag block. To call an operation and pass the defined values, use the web service class's send method. When using explicit parameters, you add the arguments to the operation call in the same order that they are defined in the server operation. This is the way that I will send the data to the server for the company vehicle request form. In the custom event handler for this custom component, I am placing a breakpoint on the closing curly brace. I'm debugging the application. By first filling out the form, and submitting it. This will trigger the breakpoint so that you can see the vehicle request data in the event object. I'm stopping the debugging session and returning to the Flash perspective. In the event handler, I am adding the vehicle service dot add vehicle request operation to send the data to the server. The data object that I am passing is event dot vehicle request data. I'm saving the file. I'm enabling the network monitor and then running the application. You can see that the first web service call retrieves the data for display in the drop-down list control. I'm filling out the form. As I submit it, you can see that a second service request is made. When I look at the Requests tab, you can see that there is a parameter with a string of SOAP-based XML data. On the Response tab, I'm drilling down into the response body to see that the server is returning data with the ID property for the record that was inserted into the database and the add status property, which lets me know that the record was added successfully to the database. Back in the main application file, I have added a conditional statement in the data operation result handler to test for the add status value. I'm displaying the record ID in the success statement and an unsuccessful message if the add status value is not true. I'm running the application. When I submit the form, the server sends back the record ID for the record that was submitted into the database. If I add just a string of text to the mobile phone number, the server will reject the data. For your next step, work through the exercise titled Passing Data to the Server with WebService.